The day the college entrance exams ended, the school's beauty, in front of the whole class, dragged me into the woods. Just as I stood there at a loss, she suddenly kissed me. Her uniquely feminine taste burst across my tongue. Then, her voice trembling with tears, she said, "Yifan, I'm willing to give you my heart, and everything I have from now on. As long as you agree to one thing, my life will be yours." The scene caught me completely off guard. It turned out her mother was seriously ill and urgently needed 600,000 yuan for surgery. To a rich, underachieving kid like me, 600,000 yuan was only half a month's allowance. Still, I refused her without hesitation, because the heart of the icy, top student school beauty seemed rather valuable. Too bad I have never believed in love. My parents entered a marriage of convenience for the family and kept up the image of a model couple for over 20 years. Did they really have hearts? Maybe they did, but they gave them all to people outside the marriage. So, do not talk to me about hearts. I do not believe in them. I straightened up and walked toward her. I stood a full head taller than her. I could clearly see her trembling eyelashes and the crystalline tears clinging to them. I reached out my hand. Her whole body stiffened. Instinctively, she closed her eyes. I lightly flicked her forehead. Chu Qiuci froze. She opened her eyes and stared at me in confusion. I withdrew my hand and looked into Chu Qiuci's eyes. Then I spoke word by word. "Chu Qiuci, listen carefully. Right now, should I be a scumbag and exploit you? Or a decent person who shows you some kindness and helps you out?" She was utterly stunned. She stared at me blankly, her mind clearly short-circuiting, but I was very patient. I simply watched her. At last, she came back to her senses. Her tense shoulders instantly sagged. With a humble flicker of hope, "Chu Qiuci," her voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz, "please help me. I beg you." I decisively shook my head. "No, I am no philanthropist. I may have plenty of money, but I do not spend it where it is unnecessary. After all, 600,000 yuan could buy me dozens of Napoleon cigars." The plea in her eyes instantly turned to despair. Seeing how close she was to breaking, the little cruel thrill I felt vanished. Then I changed my tone. "Still, I do not want to be either a scumbag or a saint. But we can be business people. I remember you are an excellent student. You have real potential. So I can lend you the money. As a personal investment, I can transfer 600,000 yuan to you right now." Incredulous joy flashed in her eyes. "But I have one condition. In 10 years, you must repay me 1 million yuan. The interest is not high. It should not be difficult for you. Also, you must get into Tsinghua or Peking University next month. That will be the first proof that you can repay me. It is also the risk control clause for this investment." As if she had seized her last lifeline, she nodded vigorously at once. She was afraid I would change my mind. I left her my phone number, then turned and left. I could not be bothered to see her expression. As I left the woods, sunlight fell over me, warm and comforting. Truthfully, I never cared whether she paid me back. 600,000 yuan was nothing to me. The contract terms were only for show. Otherwise, every random nobody would come asking to borrow money. No matter how much money I have, I cannot afford to burn through it like that. Spending 600,000 yuan to buy the satisfaction of doing a good deed today and getting a close look at the school beauty's embarrassment was not a bad deal. After speaking with my lawyer, I arranged a time and place, then forwarded the contract to Chu Qiuci. That settled the matter. I set off from my original destination, a club activity room. Through the window, I could see inside. Jiang Li, my childhood friend, was flirting eagerly with a thug-looking young man. The Jiangs and my family had known each other for generations, with close business ties. That made Jiang Li and me childhood friends too. That was not the important part. What mattered was Jiang Li's older sister, Jiang Xue. She was a true golden girl, beautiful, formidable, and especially good to me. Whenever she gave me spending money, it ran into the millions of yuan. For a layabout like me, she was practically a walking ATM. Besides, Jiang Xue was about to get engaged to my smug, showy older brother, Yi Yun. She would soon officially be my sister-in-law. A match made in heaven. My cushy life as a rich slacker would be even more secure. But lately, because of some thug, Jiang Li's grades had dropped from the top of her year to the middle. When Sister Jiang Xue personally asked me what was going on, I knew I had to step in. After all, I took her money. I had to do her a favor. Before I could even open the door, I collided head-on with a boy running out. He staggered back to steps, his eyes full of humiliation and resentment. I recognized him. He seemed to be a poor student Jiang Li had supported before. His grades were excellent, and he was an honest kid, judging by his expression. It was probably the old sob story, a poor boy falls for his benefactor, only for his benefactor to fall for a thug. I shook my head, almost laughing to myself. The kid was still too young. For rich heirs like us, throwing money at problems is often just a habit, a pastime to flaunt our status. It does not mean we are wonderful people. If you truly want to show gratitude, work your way up and repay it with value. That is how favors and relationships work. Dragging feelings into it is just asking for pain. I ignored him and pushed open the half-closed door. Jiang Li was talking with Sun Yang, laughing so hard her whole body trembled. When she saw me, Jiang Li's smile froze, and her brows immediately furrowed. Her voice was full of wariness and impatience. Yi Fan, what are you doing here? Are you here to tell me to break up with the Yang too? Let me tell you, do not waste your breath. A useless Yi family young master like you cannot even get his own life together. What gives you the right to tell me what to do? I was not angry. If anything, I found it amusing. I am not here to control you. I am just curious. How did the Jiang family's always well-behaved daughter suddenly fall for a guy like him? Jiang Li raised her voice, her tone dripping with disdain. What do you know? A Yang is nothing like you hypocritical rich kids. He lives authentically. He lives freely. She hooked her arm through Sun Yang's, her face filled with near fanatical admiration. This is what it means to truly live. Your step-by-step lives are what is truly boring. That is what it means to waste a life. Then she turned her attack on me again. Especially you. Yi Fan, you cannot study well, and you cannot even have fun properly. Other than being a Yi, what do you have? You are utterly worthless. I nodded, as if I had suddenly understood. I get it. So this is you call youth, huh? Jiang Li probably thought she had convinced me. A smug look appeared on her face. Sun Yang puffed out his chest too. He no longer looked quite so terrified when he looked at me. The next second, I looked down at Jiang Li. Come to your senses yet. Under my gaze, she instinctively stepped back. Sun Yang was still groaning on the floor. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at me. I walked over to Sun Yang. Do you not like honesty? Do you not like freedom? How does it feel now? Do you feel free? Sun Yang was drenched in sweat from the pain. He could not say a word. Jiang Li tried to stop me. One glare from me stopped her. Weren't you so deaf? Why are you not talking now? He was shaking all over. He did not dare utter a sound. I suddenly lost all interest. With this little courage, he dared chase a rich heiress. I hauled up the still trembling Jiang Li and took her straight to the west side of town, that notorious gathering place for all kinds of lowlifes. I dragged Jiang Li out of the car and pinned her against a wall in a filthy back alley. The overpowering stench of urine and rotting garbage hit us full in the face. Jiang Li immediately threw up. I pointed toward the mouth of the alley, where several dyed blonde thugs were screaming insults at each other. My voice was cold. Look, this is the kind of youth you love so much. Real enough for you. Free enough for you. If you like it, I will throw you over there right now. Jiang Li's face went white with fright. She clutched my arm desperately, sobbing so hard she could barely catch her breath. I was wrong, Yi Fan. Let's go home. Please. Just then, I caught sight of a familiar figure from the corner of my eye. It was Sun Yang, limping along. While I was not looking, he had actually slipped away from the other end of the alley. I could not be bothered to chase him. Trash like him was not worth lifting a hand against again. Jiang Li had clearly seen him too. Every trace of color drained from her face. Her last shred of illusion vanished with his fleeing figure, shattering completely. She stopped crying. She simply stood there blankly, as though her soul had been ripped away. I put her back in the car. She did not say another word on the way. When we reached the Jiang residence, she opened the door herself and walked inside in a daze. I did not get out. I simply told the driver to turn around and head home. That evening, I received a message on my phone. It was from Jiang Xue. Thanks, Yi Fan. I replied with a sticker saying, You are welcome. That settled the matter. Just as expected. Over the next 2 days, the Jiang household remained quiet. No one came looking for trouble with me. I knew my future sister-in-law, Jiang Xue, had definitely kept it under control. It seemed I had made the right move. My cushy slacker life was secure. But the next day, I could not laugh anymore. But the next day, I could not laugh anymore. Because Sun Yang was dead. He died in a car accident. It seemed my future sister-in-law was even more ruthless than I had imagined. Suddenly, this family felt a little terrifying. Everyone wore an exquisite mask, coldly removing every obstacle. My elite older brother, Yun, was like that. My future sister-in-law, Jiang Xue, was too. Only I was the odd one out. Someone who only wanted to loaf around and wait for death. A violent shiver ran through me. I sat bolt upright in bed. I had to move out immediately and get away from these ruthless people. I had to stay alive if I wanted to keep coasting. I did not tell anyone. Early the next morning, I carried a suitcase I had packed long ago downstairs. My mother was elegantly drinking tea in the living room. She merely lifted her eyes when she saw me. Her tone was flat. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere else to sleep." She did not ask again. She lowered her head and went back to her finance magazine. I had no idea where my so-called father was either. This home was as cold as an icebox. I pulled my suitcase and walked out of that lavish villa without looking back. I had a penthouse in the city center that I had bought long ago. Now it was finally useful. The apartment was large and empty. The refrigerator was completely bare. I drove to the biggest supermarket nearby. I needed food and junk food to fill my new home. Pushing a cart, I moved between the dazzling shelves. I was like a shopping robot, tossing things into the cart without expression. As I passed a corner, I suddenly stopped. In a corner of the snack aisle, I saw a girl, sneakily, stuffing a bag of bread into her sleeve. She looked a few years younger than me, small and slight, wearing a faded school uniform. She had a clean, innocent look, but her hands were not so clean. I said nothing. I simply leaned against the shelf, arms folded, watching her with interest. She was having a hard time stuffing it in. Her sleeve was too small. The bread was too big. She tried several times. Fine sweat beaded on her forehead with panic. Finally, she seemed to sense something. She froze. Slowly, she looked up. Our eyes met. I stared at her without speaking. For 10 seconds, her face visibly turned from white to red. Her large eyes first filled with fear, then panic, then overwhelming shame and humiliation. The hand holding the bread shook uncontrollably. Then, with a soft thud, the bread fell to the floor. It was as if all her strength had drained away. Her whole body wilted, head lowered. She wished she could bury her face in the floor. This is no fun. I walked over and bent down to pick up the bag of bread. I tossed it into my cart. Then, I casually grabbed every kind of cookie from the shelf beside me, along with candy, and swept it all into the cart. Soon, my cart was piled into a small mountain. I pushed the cart over to her. She still had her head down, her whole body tense, as if awaiting judgment. With the tip of my shoe, I nudged her faded canvas sneakers. My voice was even. "No money for food." Her body trembled. Then she gave the slightest nod. A second later, as if she remembered something, she shook her head sharply. I was getting impatient. "First you nod, then shake your head. What is this? A mime act? What is going on? Speak." My tone grew harsher. She trembled all over in fright. She suddenly looked up at me. Her eyes were rimmed red, brimming with tears. She opened her mouth. A few indistinct sounds came from her throat. Her hands gestured helplessly. In that moment, I froze. A thought flashed through my mind. She is mute. Seeing how anxious and helpless she looked, the impatience in my heart vanished instantly. At that moment, I regretted it. I felt like a complete asshole. The kind who, thinking back on it at midnight, would slap himself twice. I said nothing more. I turned and grabbed another shopping cart, filling it with shelf-stable food. Then I pushed both carts and motioned for her to follow. She still seemed too stunned to react. I could not be bothered explaining. I simply grabbed her wrist and led her to the checkout. After paying, I carried all the bags myself. She crouched behind me, like a little shadow, also clutching several bags of newly bought snacks. I stuffed everything into the back seat of my sports car, then told her to get in. She hesitated, but finally opened the passenger door and got in. I then asked for her home address. She took my phone. Her tiny fingers tapped at the screen for a long while. At last, she pinned a location. It was in the old part of town, a rundown place I would never even pass through. I said nothing. I started the car. The car was frighteningly silent the whole way. She kept her head down, clutching the hem of her clothes tightly. The car wound through narrow, shabby alleys. Finally, it stopped in front of a crumbling old apartment block. I killed the engine. Together, we carried the food out of the car. The stairwell was dark and damp, filled with mold and an unidentifiable stench. She led me up to the third floor. She opened a peeling wooden door. A heavy smell of herbal medicine hit me. The room was tiny, small enough to take in at a glance. The phrase for bare walls came to life before my eyes that day. On a battered wooden bed lay an emaciated old woman. Her eyes were tightly shut, her breathing faint. The girl set down the things in her hands and ran to the bedside. With practiced hands, she tucked the blanket around the old woman. Her eyes were full of worry. I finally understood. It was not that she had no money to eat. She had no money to treat her family member. She must have stolen the bread because she was starving, unwilling to touch the money for the old woman's treatment. Another sob story. I could never stand seeing that sort of thing. After the girl settled her grandmother, she came over to me and gave me a deep bow. Then she picked up an old exercise book from the table and quickly wrote something in it. One line of neat handwriting read, "Thank you. How much did all this cost? I will pay you back someday." I almost laughed at those words. Pay me back with what? By stealing again? I said nothing. I merely took out my phone and called my family's private assistant. I got straight to the point. Wang, contact the private care ward at Central Hospital. Send an ambulance to the old apartment block west of town within 15 minutes. I will send you the address. Charge everything to my account. The whole thing took less than a minute. The girl was completely dumbfounded. She stared at me blankly, mouth hanging open. She forgot to cry and forgot to write. I understood. What she could spend her whole life longing for was something I could solve with one phone call. I nudged the bag at her feet with my shoe. What are you standing there for? Pack your things. Get ready to go to the hospital. She snapped out of her daze. Then she hurriedly began packing. There was not much to pack, really. A few old clothes washed pale, and a chipped enamel cup. The ambulance arrived quickly. The professional medical staff carefully lifted the old woman onto a stretcher. The entire time, the girl gripped the hem of my shirt tightly, as though afraid I would suddenly disappear. It made me a little uncomfortable, but I did not shake her off. At the hospital, everything was perfectly arranged. A round-the-clock caregiver was assigned to the private care ward. A top team of specialists immediately began their consultation. I stood outside the bright, spotless room, watching the busy doctors and nurses inside, and the girl beside the bed, frightened yet grateful. The gloom in my heart over Sun Yang's death seemed to lift a little. Money really could buy a good mood. Just then, someone gently tugged at my shirt again. She held up that battered notebook before me. It read, "How can I ever repay your kindness?" Leaning against the doorframe, I looked at her and said, "I never asked you to repay me." She grew anxious. She wrote frantically in the notebook, her handwriting turning messy. "No, I cannot just take your money for nothing. You are a good person." When I saw the words "good person," the smile at the corner of my mouth deepened. So men like me counted as good people these days. See, money really is wonderful. I cut off her gestures. First, I am not a good person. Second, like I said, I hate trouble more than anything. Arguing with me about this is creating trouble for me. Understand? My twisted logic left her a little confused. She stared at me blankly, not knowing how to respond. Seeing her like that, I sighed. I walked over to her. Without another word, I took the notebook and pen from her hands and scribbled rapidly across the page. When I finished, I shoved the notebook back into her hands. Consider it insurance I am buying in advance. Study hard. Get into a good university someday. If I ever fall on hard times and end up begging on the street, just remember to give me a bowl of food. She looked at the words in the notebook for a long, long time. Then she looked up. Those clear eyes, as clear as mountain spring water, finally overflowed with tears. She made no sound. She only wept silently, each tear falling onto the battered notebook. Awkwardly, I looked away. All right, stop crying. Your grandmother still needs you. What good is all this crying? Which school do you attend? I will have Wang pay your tuition while he is at it. From now on, I will have Wang transfer you 5,000 each month for living expenses, until you graduate and find a job. Do not tell me you do not want it. This counts as insurance too. After that, I could not be bothered to watch this emotional scene any longer. I gave the doctor a few brief instructions, then turned and left. As I drove along the broad road, I suddenly found it rather funny I was the Yi family's second son. Could I ever fall on hard times? Not a chance. All right. I was just spending money to earn myself some good karma. After all, the people around me were more ruthless than the last. I needed to build up more good karma to make sure a useless bum like me would live in luxury for the rest of my life. Then I spent 5 years down and out. Just 5 years. My slick, self-important elite older brother, Yun. After getting married, when the scandal broke, I was sunbathing on a private island. When I got the call, I almost laughed. It was exactly what I expected. My brother was a spineless, indecisive coward at heart. Yet he loved pretending to be deeply devoted. I could not even be bothered to return for that farce. Rich family marriages were always some version of the same mess, until my bank cards were frozen one after another, and every property, stock, and fund in my name changed hands overnight. Only then did I realize something was very wrong. By the time I rushed back from the island, everything had already been settled. The Yi group now bore the Jiang name. My father had been charged with multiple financial crimes. The evidence was airtight. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars. My brother Yi Yun was left with nothing. And me, a worthless bum who only wanted an easy life, was not spared either. The private stash I had saved for more than 20 years was all gone. I stood outside my penthouse, staring at the two expressionless bodyguards in black blocking my way. My head was buzzing. Come on, lady. Fine, get your revenge. I would not even care if you killed my brainless brother. But you sent my father to prison and bled the Yi group dry. What was that about? At that thought, my anger surged. Could I be living in some heroine's revenge novel, playing the role of the disposable relative swept away with everyone else? Just then, the door opened. Jiang Xue sat on my favorite Italian sofa, elegantly swirling a wine glass. 5 years had passed. She was more beautiful than before, and colder too. That powerful aura of complete control was suffocating. When she saw me, she set down her glass and gave me a gentle smile. Yi Fan, you are back. I said nothing. I only stared at her. She rose to her feet and walked toward me, step by step. She reached out to touch my face. Do not look at me like that. I did not want this either. I turned my head away from her hand. She was not offended. Drawing back her hand, she spoke hurriedly. Your brother was too stupid. I gave him a chance, but he did not take it. Jiang Xue shook her head. Her gaze on me turned faintly amused. So, this is why you wiped out my entire family. She paused, her voice carrying a hint of seduction. However, things are different now. He betrayed me first. My revenge is completely justified. Now, I do not need a husband. As she spoke, she stepped closer to me with a predatory intensity. Xiao Fan, would you like to stay and keep your sister company? I can take care of you, like I used to. When I heard that, I laughed until tears nearly spilled out. I wiped the corner of my eye and looked at Jiang Xue's flawless face. Hearing you say that, I am starting to wonder if you arranged it all yourself. The smile on her face finally froze. It lasted only a moment, but I caught it. The last shred of hope in my heart vanished. Just as I thought, this woman had been insane from the very beginning. To achieve her goals, she would stop at nothing. My smile faded. I looked at her without expression, then slowly raised my middle finger at her. The last trace of amusement left her face. It was replaced by icy indifference. You don't know what's good for you. She waved her hand, without another glance at me. The two bodyguards immediately stepped forward, one on each side. They hauled me up like a chicken. I was roughly thrown out of my own home. I stood in the empty hallway and could not stop myself from scoffing. If I had believed her lies, stayed until she got tired of playing with me, I probably would not even know how I died. I knew perfectly well that I could not outplay her. Even my father, that old fox, had fallen into her trap. What chance did someone like me, who only knew how to eat, drink, and have fun, have against her? Stay away from that crazy woman. Nothing matters more than staying alive. I took out my phone and opened my contacts. I found the friends who always called me Brother Yi. I made the first call. Hello, young Master Zhou. This is Yi Fan. There were 3 seconds of silence. Then, cautiously, who is this? Sorry, you have the wrong number. The call ended. I froze for a moment, then laughed bitterly at myself. I called the second number. The result was exactly the same. The third and fourth calls either claimed I had the wrong number or went unanswered. I leaned against the cold wall and deleted those so-called friends from my phone, one by one. By the end, only a few family numbers remained on the screen. I sold everything valuable I had. Altogether, it brought in less than 100,000 yuan. That amount, in the past, would not have covered one night's bar tab. Now, it was everything I owned. I wandered the streets without a destination. Before I knew it, I was back beneath my apartment building. I could not help but smile bitterly. If nothing else, I could get a factory job. The requirements were low, and it included meals and lodging. After all, after more than 20 years of luxury, I had enjoyed enough of it. With my head lowered, I walked and weighed my options. Without warning, I walked straight into a soft embrace. A faint, sweet fragrance reached me. I instinctively wanted to apologize. I looked up, only to meet a pair of clear, bright eyes. She was a delicate-looking young woman. She looked vaguely familiar, but I could not recall where I had seen her. Yet she clearly knew me. I could clearly see it. The instant she recognized me, her eyes burst with indescribable surprise and relief. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something. But then she seemed to remember something, and instead reached into her pocket, fumbling out her phone, and quickly typed on it. The screen read, "Mr. Yi. Do you remember me?" I looked at the words Mr. Yi. Not many people still address me that way these days. I studied her face carefully. Fragments of memory slowly came together. Then it suddenly hit me. I stared at her in surprise. The girl trembling in that supermarket 5 years ago. The girl caring for her grandmother in that rundown shack. It was you. Her eyes lit up brilliantly at once, and she nodded vigorously. Her joy nearly overflowed from her clear eyes. I was even more confused. "What are you doing here?" She typed rapidly again, and held the phone out to me. The screen read, "I saw the news about the Jiang family. I was worried about you. I thought you might come back here to take a look. So, I have been waiting here since yesterday." It felt as if something had struck my heart. That meant, during the 24 hours since I was thrown out, she had stayed beneath the apartment building I could never enter again, in the clumsiest way possible, holding onto an uncertain possibility. A ridiculous, complicated rush of emotion surged through me, while my so-called friends were busy cutting all ties with me. A girl I had nearly forgotten had waited here for me day and night. I forced a faint smile, wanting to say something. She seemed to see my embarrassment. Her screen displayed another message. "Do you have nowhere to go?" My silence was answer enough. She put away her phone, then did something I never expected. She reached out and gently tugged at the cuff of my hoodie. Her pull was weak. I could have pulled free with ease. Yet that pull at my cuff, the faintest, pleading tug, was like an invisible chain, holding me in place. She tugged me toward the street corner. As if under a spell, I did not resist. I simply followed behind her. We arrived at a small bakery glowing with warm light. It was called Glow Bakery. The shop was already closed, but the display lights were still on. She unlocked the door, then looked back, signaling for me to enter. The shop was small, but clean and neat. The air was filled with the scent of cream and wheat. From beneath the counter, she took out a folder carefully sealed in plastic. She pulled out a yellowed sheet of paper and slid it in front of me. It was the note I had written 5 years ago, an insurance clause I had scrawled in bold strokes. "If I ever fall on hard times and have to beg on the streets, just remember to give me a bowl of food." She pointed at the words, then pointed at me, then at herself and the bakery. Her gaze was as solemn as if she were fulfilling a sacred promise. Finally, she turned around, and from the oven, took out a croissant still warm from the heat. She held it out to me. There was no pity, no sympathy either, only the simple certainty that now it was her turn. I took the croissant and took a bite. The taste was nothing compared to the fine meals I had once eaten, but it gave me a sense of peace. "Are you still hiring?" The girl froze for a moment. Then, a radiant smile bloomed across her face. She nodded eagerly. That day, the muddled, aimless first half of my life came to an end, and the rest of my life became inseparably tied to this little bakery, Glow Bakery. From then on. And my boss was the girl I had once thought I would never cross paths with again, the little mute girl. Her name was Shen Youwei. With the money I had given her, along with her own savings, after graduating from college, she opened this bakery on the street. The shop was small, but business was good. The neighbors all seemed especially fond of her. They would go out of their way to stop by, buy a few loaves of bread, and chat for a while. The poor girl has it hard on her own. But now things are better. She has someone to help her, and he looks dependable. Wearing an apron printed with little bears, I clumsily packaged fresh-baked toast. Listening to them, I felt nothing much. Dependable. I was a useless bum, incapable of work and clueless about the basics of life. What made them think I was reassuring? Still, my arrival really did lighten her burden. At least, for heavy work like mixing flour and hauling sacks of sugar. That slight girl no longer had to grit her teeth and do it alone. When the shop closed at night, we went back to our tiny home upstairs. Bare walls and nothing else. That phrase described her former home. If her old place had for bare walls, this one barely had one. One dining table, 2 chairs, a sofa, and a tiny room partitioned off from the balcony. That was my bedroom. It was smaller than the bathroom in my old villa. Yet I slept more soundly than on any night in the previous 20 years of my life. No schemes, no hypocrisy. In the air, there was only the faint scent of wheat drifting up from downstairs. I began learning how to be a normal person. I learned to sweep without scattering ash all over the room. I learned to make porridge in a pressure cooker without blowing up the kitchen. Most of the time, the results were disastrous. I mistook salt for sugar and made a pot of painfully salty red bean paste. She took one bite, her little face scrunched up, but she did not spit it out. She simply drank a large glass of water in silence, then picked up a pen and wrote in her notebook, "The flavor is very unique. Next time, you can use a little less sugar." Seeing how serious she was, I was angry and amused at once. I snatched the bowl away and dumped it into the trash. After that, I began learning sign language. I bought a stack of textbooks. Every night, after she fell asleep, I stayed in my little partition room, facing my phone screen, practicing again and again. From simple phrases like hello and thank you, to you worked hard today, and good night. The first time I used awkward signs and signed to her, "Good morning," she froze. Then, in her usually calm eyes, it was as though a star had fallen into them, and they shone brilliantly. She raised her hands and answered me with complete sincerity. In that moment, in more than 20 years, I had never felt as I did then, that doing something could be so worthwhile. The days passed, one by one, and gradually, life got better. I went from an idiot who could not even use an oven, to a baking apprentice who could whip cream and pipe frosting with ease. The bakery's business kept improving. We even took over the shop next door and expanded the bakery. In my bank account, I once again had a decent sum. Not a fortune, but enough. In savings to move out and rent a place. Several times, I wanted to bring it up with Shen Youwei, but the words reached my lips and I swallowed them back. Where would I move to? What would I eat? Living alone would be so dull. Besides, it was not easy for a young girl like her to be alone. I could help her out too, could I not? I came up with all kinds of reasons for myself, then kept freeloading here with a perfectly clear conscience. Shen Youwei never mentioned it either. It was as if she had simply accepted my presence. I did not believe in love. My father and my brother were proof enough of what not to be. But the peace I felt with Shen Youwei had become addictive. I shook my head and forced those messy thoughts from my mind. It was nearly noon. Time to prepare her lunch. I was taking off my apron, getting ready to head upstairs, when suddenly, a familiar figure pushed open the bakery door and walked in. She wore a sharply tailored suit, flawless makeup, and her hair was pinned up without a strand out of place. Everything about her radiated the polished air of a successful professional. It was Chu Qiuci. 5 years had passed. The insecurity and embarrassment poverty had bred in her had been completely washed away. She was no longer the icy campus beauty in a faded uniform who had begged me for help. Now, she was polished and perfect. A young man followed behind her. He looked barely over 20, dressed in a suit and tie, like a college graduate fresh out of school. The way he looked at me was openly hostile. Probably her male assistant. Chu Qiuci's gaze settled on my bare print apron. For a moment, her brow tightened almost imperceptibly, but her poised smile quickly returned. "Yifan, long time no see." I nodded, which passed for a greeting. My hands did not stop untying my apron. He seemed to want to ask something, but thought better of it. In the end, he took a check from his bag and slid it across to me. I glanced at the amount on the check, picked it up, and slipped it into my pocket. Thanks. It is what I am owed, though I had never expected to get it back. The male assistant behind her saw how readily I accepted the money, and the contempt in his eyes deepened. Chu Qiuci quickly composed herself. Her gaze swept over our little bakery, before finally landing on my face. It was that look, one I knew all too well. Condescending pity. Xiao Fan, I heard what happened with your family. If you do not have anywhere suitable to go now, you can come work at my company. My husband and I only recently started our company. This is exactly when we need people. Her deliberately compassionate act made my stomach churn. That deal back then was my investment. Now she was repaying the debt. Neither of us owed the other anything. And now she was putting on this act again, trying to turn her former creditor into the object of her charity. I looked at the man beside her, her male assistant. His expression was growing uglier by the second, and suddenly understood. She was enjoying the thrill of saving someone, just as I had once enjoyed watching her humiliation. She now enjoyed seeing me brought low. Only, she was more hypocritical than I was. She even wrapped herself in a cloak of kindness. I refused coldly. No need. I am doing just fine here. Chu Qiuci's smile stiffened. Xiao Fan, do not let your pride get in the way. I know what kind of life you used to have. I cut her off, my voice already impatient. I said, no need. At last, she stopped pressing. A flash of displeasure crossed her beautiful face. Fine. Since you have made up your mind, I will not force you. The moment she turned away, the male assistant behind her immediately stepped forward. He thoughtfully reached out, as if to support her arm. Chu Qiuci naturally turned her head toward him and gave him a smile only they understood. Now, casually, I picked up my phone and, without giving anything away, aimed it at them and pressed the shutter. The angle was perfect. In the photo, the assistant's hand was practically against her waist, and her smile, anyone who saw it would not think she was looking at an ordinary subordinate. I raised my phone and waved it at them. Then, in 2.5 minutes, I found her husband's public email address online. Then I anonymously sent him the photo. Once that was done, I deleted the photo and the sending record. I felt much better. After quietly finishing lunch with Shen Youwei, my mind gradually settled. Leaning against the counter, I considered how to spend the 1 million yuan. The number on it was so clear it almost dazzled me. How long had it been since I had seen this much money? At least our lives would finally not have to be so tight anymore. And there was the new equipment Shen Youwei had wanted for so long. The more I thought about it, the happier I became. I had never realized 1 million yuan could be so useful. Just then, the wind chime over the door rang. A bright voice, feigning fragility, interrupted my pleasant thoughts. Xiao Fan. I turned around and saw Jiang Li. A lot of familiar faces had come by today. If I remembered correctly, her unlucky husband, Yang Yanghao, had been dead for less than 2 years. What do you want? I leaned against the counter, my face expressionless. She bit her lip. Her eyes shimmered with a watery sheen. That hesitant, unfinished look made me nauseous. Jiang Li spoke with a trace of grievance. I wanted to see you. Second Miss Jiang. What act are you putting on this time? I nearly laughed out loud. Her eyes immediately reddened. It was as though she had suffered some terrible injustice. Yi Fan. I know I was foolish before and made so many mistakes. I always thought I loved the kind of passionate, all-consuming romance. But only now do I understand. What I truly want is simply a stable home. Her tone was earnest, her eyes full of affection. She raised her head. Those glistening eyes stared straight at me, brimming with love and nostalgia. Yi Fan, let's start over. I know your situation now. My sister truly went too far. But it is okay. I can support you. Her tone carried a hint of pity and condescension. Oh, please. So you're pulling the old bad girl turn good routine again. But do not get it wrong. When did anything ever start between us? I barely resisted the urge to roll my eyes. My thoughts drifted back several years. Her wedding to Yang Yanghao, once a poor student, had been grand and touching. At the wedding, she tearfully said he was the light in her life, the happiness she would cling to no matter the cost. I stood below the stage then, watching that fool completely swept away by her words. I had only one thought. This guy is finished. Sure enough, less than 2 years into the marriage, Jiang Li got bored. Once the passion faded, and marriage became daily routine, She naturally grew tired of it. Then, right on cue, a fox innocent charmer appeared. At least that poor kid was not a complete coward. He had evidence against Jiang Li and wanted to stand up for himself. Then he died. How could that possibly be a coincidence? Behind it, it was probably my former sister-in-law, Jiang Xue again. Returning to the present, I looked at Jiang Li, still playing at devotion, and the smile on my lips widened. Jiang Li, do you think every man is an idiot? Her expression froze. I spoke slowly. Your husband's funeral was quite lavish. I saw it in the news. You wept as if your heart had been torn apart. It was enough to break the hearts of all who heard it and bring tears to the eyes of all who saw it. Too bad. If only that night I hadn't seen someone who looked a lot like you at the hotel entrance, walking arm in arm with a handsome man into the elevator. All color instantly drained from Jiang Li's face. Oh, right? That handsome man did not get to celebrate for long before he jumped from a building too. Jiang Li, are you not tired? I stepped forward, staring straight into her trembling eyes. Wearing a mask and putting on an act every day, does it not disgust you? I forced her back step by step, until she finally hit the doorframe. Her whole body shook like a leaf in an autumn wind. You are lying. She tried to argue fiercely, but her voice was weak and hollow. I could not be bothered to waste another word on her. I was not worried she would retaliate. A woman so obsessed with playing the saint would never allow herself to lose control and retaliate in humiliation and rage. Her carefully crafted image mattered more to her than her life. She had worn that mask for too long. It had stuck to her face and could no longer be torn off. Leave. As though she had been pardoned, she stumbled as she fled outside. Her retreating figure was utterly pathetic. At last, the shop was quiet again. I let out a long breath. It felt like I had breathed out 5 years of bad luck. Soft footsteps came from the stairs. Shen Youwei came downstairs carrying a bowl of warm, freshly made dessert. She walked over to me and handed me the bowl. Her eyes asked what had happened. I shook my head, telling her it was nothing. Shen Youwei sighed, her face full of concern. But you look unhappy. I looked into her clear eyes and smiled, without setting down the bowl. I made the signs with slightly clumsy hands. I'm fine. She understood. A sweet smile bloomed across her face. Sunlight streamed through the shop window, falling over us, warm and gentle. After that day, I stopped paying attention to that social circle. I cut all contact with them for good. Now, I only wanted to live well with Shen Youwei, running this little shop, and living a quiet, honest life. Every morning at 5, I got up half an hour before her. I went downstairs to prepare the first batch of bread dough to rise. By the time she came downstairs, still sleepy-eyed, the kitchen already smelled of warm wheat, and the hot water was ready. She always signed, "Good morning," to me first, then skillfully tied on her apron, and began preparing the day's desserts. We rarely spoke, but we grew more in sync every day. When we got busy, she would get so flustered that sweat covered her forehead. I would hand her a glass of ice water. When she took the glass, her fingers would sometimes brush the back of my hand, cool and soft. I began noticing all her habits, and she no longer cautiously tried to guess what I was thinking. Our days were full. During the day, we ran the shop together. At night, she taught me to make more elaborate desserts. Sometimes we could go an entire evening without paper or pen, and still hold a complete conversation. That understanding made me feel at peace. I began seriously considering something. I wanted to marry her. I did not believe in love, but I was beginning to believe. Some people are simply meant to be together. I just wanted things to stay this way with her forever. 3 months later, I confessed my feelings to her. More precisely, I proposed to her. It was her birthday. Without telling her, I prepared a little surprise at the shop. When she came downstairs that evening, the entire shop was lit by candles. She stood blankly at the foot of the stairs, covering her mouth. I walked up to her, dropped to one knee, and took out a diamond ring. I don't know how to say sweet things, and I don't believe in eternal vows. Will you marry me? She cried, tears like pearls from a broken string, falling one by one to the floor. She nodded hard, then held out her hand for me to put on the ring. The ring was a little too large. Her hand was too slender, but she clenched her fist tightly, so it would not slip off. I held her close, breathing in the faint fragrance of her hair. In that moment, I suddenly felt that the first 20-odd years of my life had all been preparing me to meet her. Our wedding was simple. It was not very large. We invited only our neighbors and a few former classmates we still got along with some friends. I had no interest in putting on a show. I just wanted to give Shen Youwei a proper wedding. The day before the wedding, I went to a barber shop to get cleaned up and bought myself a decent suit. Shen Youwei's wedding dress was something we picked out together. When she tried it on, she seemed to glow. I stood outside the fitting room, looking at her in the mirror. Suddenly, it all felt unreal. This girl, beautiful as an angel, was really going to marry me. On our wedding day, everything went smoothly. Shen Youwei's grandmother was doing much better. She attended our wedding in a wheelchair. The old woman held my hand and said weakly, "Thank you for taking care of our Youwei." I felt a little embarrassed. She's the one who takes care of me. When we exchanged rings, Shen Youwei's hand was trembling. I held her hand and whispered in her ear, "Don't be nervous. It's just a formality." She burst out laughing. Her nervousness vanished at once. "Mr. Yifan, do you take Miss Shen Youwei as your wife? For richer or poorer, will you love and protect her?" "I do." "Miss Shen Youwei, do you take Mr. Yifan as your husband? For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, will you love and respect him?" Shen Youwei couldn't speak, but she nodded firmly. Then she signed. The officiant froze for a moment, not knowing what to do. I smiled and translated for her. "She says she does." Warm applause erupted from the guest. When it was time for the kiss, she was a little shy, her face red as an apple. I gently kissed her lips, so very gently, as though I were afraid of hurting her. Then, I leaned close and said in her ear, "Mrs. Yi, please take care of me from now on." She laughed in my arms until her shoulders shook. My former classmates came over to toast and congratulate us. One former roommate I used to be close with said, "Xiao Fan, you've changed. You used to act like you didn't care about anything. Now, you look like a normal person." I looked at Shen Youwei communicating with her grandmother and smiled. Maybe it's because I have someone worth caring about now. After the wedding, we returned to our home upstairs. Everything was still the same, except for the flowers and gifts from the wedding. Shen Youwei changed out of her wedding dress, put on her usual clothes, and made me a late-night meal in the kitchen. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her busy figure. Suddenly, I felt completely content. This was the life I wanted. The two of us living a simple life together. She brought the late-night meal over and saw me staring blankly. She waved a hand in front of me. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about you." Her face reddened again. She gave me a playful slap. Then, she wrote in her notebook, "Yifan, we're married now. Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "No regrets." "What about you?" "No regrets either. It just feels a little unreal, like a dream." I reached out and pinched her cheek. "Did that hurt?" She covered her cheek and glared at me. Then she wrote in her notebook, "This isn't a dream, and I love you." As Shen Youwei wrote those 3 words, her fingers trembled slightly. Under the dim yellow light, her lashes looked like butterfly wings dampened by rain. I stared at those words. Something seemed to slam hard into my heart. It wasn't the racing heartbeat I felt when the prettiest girl at school confessed to me, nor the vain satisfaction of spending money recklessly. It was a fine, dull, heavy ache, laced with a sense of peace I'd never known before. I took the pen from her hand and closed her notebook. I deliberately put on a stern face. "Mrs. Yi, writing this in the middle of the night. Are you trying to keep me awake?" She quickly waved her hands. Her face flushed bright red as she awkwardly signed, "It's true." At that moment, I sighed and pulled her into my arms. My chin rested against her soft hair. The woman in my arms grew quiet, her breath softly brushing my neck. In that moment, I suddenly realized the Jiang family's wealth, Jiang Xue and Chu Qiuci, none of it was worth what I had now. It was worth more than my past 20-odd years combined. But fate always chooses the moment you feel happiest to trip you up. Life after our wedding was like bread rising in an oven, warm and full. We got up at 4 in the morning to make dough. By 6, the first batch of croissants came out of the oven, filling the whole place with their fragrance. Shen Youwei taught me how to pipe frosting. I was clumsy and always made a mess of the cream. She never got upset. She held my hand and corrected me little by little. When business was slow in the afternoon, she would rest her head on the counter and nap. Sunlight streamed through the glass display window, casting flecks of light across her face. I often found myself lost in thought as I watched her sleep. How could this girl be so pure? As if this filthy world had never tainted her. But filth always splatters. One rainy night, as the shop was about to close, several drunk men burst through the glass door. Their leader was a local thug, known as Brother King. He had come to demand protection money before, but I had chased him out with a broom. Now, he reeked of alcohol. He kicked over the potted plant by the door, his voice arrogant. "Mute girl. Get out here." Shen Youwei was counting the day's receipts. The sound startled her, and she instinctively looked at me. I shoved her behind me and grabbed a rolling pin, looking for trouble. Brother King grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "Young Master Yi, you really think you're somebody, don't you? I hear you married a mute. My brothers and I came for a celebratory drink." Ha ha ha. The thugs behind him roared with laughter, their eyes glued to Shen Youwei. It was sickening. I gripped the rolling pin tightly, my knuckles turning white. "Get out." "Oh, you're quite protective of her." As he spoke, he stepped closer, his alcoholic breath washing over my face. "This shop of yours, you don't want to keep it open." Suddenly, Shen Youwei slipped out from behind me, holding a box of freshly baked cookies. She forced a smile and signed to them. She was offering them some. My heart felt pierced by a needle. This fool always believed kindness could dissolve cruelty. Brother King knocked the box from her hands. "Who'd eat this crap?" Cookies shattered across the floor. He reached for Shen Youwei's wrist. I snapped. I swung the rolling pin straight at him. In the chaos, I had no idea how many punches and kicks I took. I only remember shielding Shen Youwei in the corner behind the counter. Police sirens drew closer. The thugs scattered at once. With trembling hands, Shen Youwei touched the blood at the corner of my mouth. Huge tears streamed down her face, but she couldn't make a sound. I wiped my face and forced a smile. "Why are you crying? Your man isn't dead yet." She cried even harder, curling into my arms, like a frightened little animal. That night, she held my arm as she slept. Any slight movement woke her. I looked at the dark circles beneath her eyes. A lingering fear of the violence churned inside me. What if I hadn't protected her today? The next day, I bought a solid steel rod at a flea market and kept it beneath the counter. When Shen Youwei saw it, she shook her head hard. I tapped the steel rod and signed, "For protection. Best if we never need it." She lowered her eyes and wrote, "I'm afraid you'll get hurt, but I'm even more afraid you'll get hurt." I ruffled her hair. "Shen Youwei, you're all I have now." She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with tears, then nodded softly. Our peaceful days didn't last long. Jiang Li showed up again, impossible to shake. This time, she didn't come inside. She was driving a flashy red sports car, parked by the curb. Sunglasses covered half her face. As she crooked a finger at me, I was mixing flour and couldn't be bothered with her. She got out, leaned against the car door, and smiled. "Does your wife know how you helped Chu Qiuci?" Her voice was openly provocative. My hand slipped. The bag of flour hit the ground hard, sending up a cloud of white dust. Hearing the crash, Shen Youwei ran out of the shop and looked at us in confusion. Jiang Li removed her sunglasses. Her gaze swept over Shen Youwei, filled with undisguised pity. How pathetic. Stuck with a worthless loser who couldn't even give her a decent wedding. I clenched my fist, veins throbbing at my temples. "Jiang Li, shut up." "Ha ha. What, scared? You weren't like this back then, when the school beauty begged you. Didn't you enjoy the thrill of playing benefactor? Why pretend to be such a devoted husband now?" Shen Youwei couldn't understand Jiang Li's words, but she could feel the tension in the air. She gently tugged at the hem of my shirt, her eyes full of worry. I took a deep breath and swallowed my anger. Turning to Shen Youwei, I signed. "It's okay. Go inside first." Shen Youwei hesitated, unwilling to move. But Jiang Li suddenly played a recording on speakerphone. It was Chu Qiuci, years ago in the woods. Her voice choked with tears. "I'm willing to give you my heart, everything I have, as long as you promise me one thing." "I'm not a philanthropist." Shen Youwei's face went pale instantly. She looked at me, then at Jiang Li. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Jiang Li put away her phone with satisfaction. "Little sister, what makes you think he's a good man? He helped Chu Qiuci just so he could enjoy watching others be humiliated. You're talking nonsense. Maybe helping you was just a passing whim too." I completely lost control. I lunged for her phone. Jiang Li screamed and dove into her car. She locked the doors. The sports car sped away. Shen Youwei and I were left standing amid the swirling flower dust. She lowered her head, her shoulders trembling faintly. I tried to touch her, but she instinctively stepped back. That single step cut into my heart like a knife. After closing that night, the attic was suffocatingly tense. Shen Youwei made the bed with her back to me, never once looking at me. I turned her by the shoulders, forcing her to face me. Do you believe her? Shen Youwei bit her lip, tears brimming in her eyes. She wrote in her notebook. Is what she said true? Yes, but not entirely. I wiped my face, then told her how I rejected Chu Qiuci back then, and how we made that contract, holding nothing back. Shen Youwei, I'll admit I'm not a good man, but with you, I never once thought of it as charity. She was silent for a long time. So long I thought she'd never speak to me again. Finally, she raised her hands and slowly signed. I'm scared. Scared of what? That one day, you'll get tired of me and won't want me anymore. Her fingers trembled. I have nothing. I only have you. My heart clenched. I pulled her tightly into my arms. Silly girl. I'm the one who only has you. That night, we fell asleep in each other's arms, like two wounded animals, licking each other's wounds. But Jiang Li's words were like a thorn, buried in Shen Youwei's heart. She became sensitive and insecure. If I came home 10 minutes late, she would grow restless with worry. If a female customer talked to me a little longer, she would quietly walk away. I noticed it, but didn't know how to ease her fears. Until one night, I woke up and found the space beside me empty. Shen Youwei was curled up in a corner of the balcony, silently weeping in the moonlight. I walked over and embraced her from behind. Her body stiffened, then relaxed. She buried her face against my chest. Shen Youwei, let me tell you a story. I told her about my parents, my brother, and Jiang Xue, and the rot beneath that family's glamorous facade. I never used to believe in love. I thought it was all transactions of self-interest. But you're different. You made me feel there was still some humanity left in life. In the moonlight, her eyes were like black glass beneath water. She reached out, tracing my brows, eyes, and nose inch by inch. At last, her fingers rested on my lips. Then she leaned closer and kissed me, ever so softly. It was a pure kiss, untouched by desire. Like the first snow settling in your palm. I froze, then kissed her back. Something quietly melted in that kiss. The thorn Jiang Li had planted was silently pulled free. Life returned to peace. But danger always lurked in the shadows. One afternoon, an unwelcome visitor came to the bakery, Jiang Xue. 5 years had passed. She had grown even more bloated. In a custom-made suit, she looked completely out of place in the cramped bakery. She had not brought any bodyguards. She was alone. When her gaze fell on Shen Youwei, it carried a cold, appraising edge. This is the life you chose. Hiding away in a place like this. Playing house with a mute girl. I shielded Shen Youwei behind me. Say what you came to say. As she spoke, Jiang Xue casually pulled up a chair and sat down. Yifan, you are still so childish. Shen Youwei suddenly gripped my arm tightly. Jiang Xue slowly opened her handbag, took out a yellowed photograph, and slid it toward us. It showed a young couple. The man's features resembled Shen Youwei's. The woman held a baby in her arms. Your grandmother never told you, did she? Your parents did not die from illness. They died in a car accident. The man who killed them was named Yitao. Yitao was Yifan's father. He was driving drunk. The air instantly froze. My mind began to buzz. I could barely stay on my feet. Shen Youwei stared fixedly at the photograph. Her face was white as paper. Surprised. Jiang Xue stood. She looked down at us. Yifan, your father killed her parents. Yet now you pretend to love her and marry her. How ironic. Shut up. I roared, though my voice shook violently. Jiang Xue bent close to Shen Youwei's ear. She whispered, Little sister, do you think he treats you well because he feels guilty? With that, she turned and left, as though she had never been there. Only a hellish silence remained. Shen Youwei did not move. It was as if her soul had been ripped away. I reached out to touch her, but she recoiled as if shocked. Her eyes were hollow and unfamiliar. Shen Youwei, let me explain. I did not know. Shen Youwei abruptly shoved me away. She raced upstairs and slammed the attic door shut. I ran after her and pounded desperately on the door. There was no response from inside. After a while, a piece of paper slid beneath the door. It bore only a few trembling words. "Let me be alone." That night, I sat outside the door until dawn. There was never a sound from inside, but I knew she had not slept either. The next day, Shen Youwei did not come downstairs to open the shop. I cooked porridge and brought it up to her. The door was still locked. It was the same on the third and fourth days. She kept herself locked in the room, without eating or drinking. The bomb Jiang Xue had left behind had nearly reduced the tiny world we had just built to complete ruin. During the days Shen Youwei locked herself in the attic, I was like a trapped beast, pacing back and forth through the tiny shop. Bags of flour lay scattered across the floor. Burnt cookies from days ago still sat on the baking trays. The air reeked of sour fermentation and despair. Countless times I wanted to rush upstairs and smash through that thin door. But whenever I saw beneath the door, her notes pushed out, the writing growing ever more scrawled, my raised hand would fall helplessly to my side. I feared that getting close would be the final straw that broke her. That helplessness cut deeper than when I watched my family fall apart. At least then, I could be angry. I could curse. I could grab my bags and walk away. But now, I did not even have the right to be angry. The blood of the man responsible flowed through my veins. Jiang Xue had found my weakest defense with cruel precision. It crumbled with one blow. Late on the fifth night, a muffled sound came from the attic. A whimper like a wounded little animal. Then came the dull thud of something heavy hitting the floor. My heart stopped. I could no longer worry about anything else. I used the spare key to force the door open. Shen Youwei had collapsed beside the bed. Her face was ashen. Her lips were dry and cracked. An overturned cup of water lay beside her hand. She seemed to have wanted water, but lacked even the strength for that. After days without food or water, her body had reached its limit. I rushed over and gathered her into my arms. She was light as a feather, as if she might vanish at any moment. I patted her cheek. "Shen Youwei." My voice shook beyond recognition. Her eyelids trembled. They slowly opened a sliver. Her hollow gaze settled on my face, but it could not focus. In that moment, I truly feared she would slip away. I feared I would not even get the chance to make amends. I raced downstairs like a madman, warmed some porridge, and mixed warm water. Little by little, I pried open her lips and carefully fed her with a small spoon. She swallowed mechanically, her gaze still unfocused. After feeding her half a bowl of porridge, I brought up hot water and gently wiped her haggard face with a towel. Then her icy hands and feet. Through it all, she was like a doll, letting me tend to her however I needed. Only the occasional tear sliding from the corner of her eye proved she was still alive. I tucked her back beneath the covers. Still fully dressed, I lay down beside her and held her tightly through the blanket. I did not dare sleep, afraid she would disappear the moment I closed my eyes. "Shen Youwei," I whispered in her ear, my voice terribly hoarse. "I know you can hear me. You can hate me. You can blame me. Anything you want, but you cannot die. What will I do if you die? I, Yifan, have lived for over 20 years. I have done plenty of awful things, but I never meant to hurt anyone. I will answer for the sins my father committed. If hating me makes you feel better, then hate me." As I said that, I took her hand and pressed it to my heart. "But you cannot punish me this way. By punishing yourself. Your grandmother fought with everything she had to raise you. She did not raise you for this to be your end. Do you remember that croissant you gave me? It was the bitterest and sweetest thing I had ever tasted. Bitter because I had fallen so low. Sweet because of you. The shop is called Glimmer. You are the one who lit it. If you are gone, that light will go out. My world will truly go dark." I did not know how long I kept talking, until my throat was dry and aching. The body in my arms was still ice cold, but her breathing seemed a little steadier. At dawn the next day, I was about to get up and make her something to eat, when an icy hand gently caught my sleeve. I spun around and met her eyes. They were still red and swollen, but a faint light had returned to them. She looked at me. Her lips moved. No sound came out, but I could make out the word water. I practically stumbled over myself rushing to get her water. My hands shook so badly that I spilled half of it. After helping her drink a few sips, leaning in my arms, she closed her eyes. Another tear slid from the corner of her eye, but this time, it was no longer the dead stillness of despair. There was only exhausted vulnerability. She was letting me close again. That realization almost made me weep with joy. The days that followed were a slow, difficult process of healing. Shen Youwei's body gradually recovered, but the wounds in her heart were far from healed. She became unusually quiet, even more silent than before. She still ran the shop with me, but her movements were slow. She would often stare blankly at the plates on the counter. She still woke in terror at night, drenched in cold sweat. I held her, feeling her heart hammer wildly. She no longer used her notebook to communicate with me. When she needed to say something, she only used simple gestures. I knew that thorn was still buried deep in her heart. Jiang Xue's words were like venom, corroding every bit of her trust in our love. She began instinctively avoiding my touch. When I put food in her bowl, she would freeze for a moment before taking it. When I tried to hold her at night, she would stiffen and turn away. That deliberate distance was more suffocating than any argument. I understood that she was struggling, re-examining everything between us. My help, my proposal, was it all born of a belated guilt at having to pay for my father's sins? The turning point came one afternoon. An elderly woman who often came in for whole wheat bread tremblingly handed us a thick envelope. She said it contained specialty cookies her son had sent from abroad. She insisted on thanking us for always looking after her. Unable to refuse, Shen Youwei accepted it. My dear, you and your man are good people. There are not many honest business owners like you these days. You two must be good to each other. The elderly woman chattered on, holding Shen Youwei's hand. After she left, Shen Youwei stood behind the counter with a box of cookies for a long time. Sunlight shone through the window onto her lowered lashes. I watched from afar, not daring to disturb her. Then she suddenly turned and came over to me. She handed me the box of cookies, then pointed to the box of old things in the corner. Inside were several photos from our wedding, along with the notebook she had treasured. The battered notebook containing the insurance clauses I wrote for her years ago. I paused for a moment, then understood what she meant. I went over and dug the notebook out from the bottom of the box. I dusted it off and handed it to her. She took the notebook, turned to the blank space on the last page, and picked up a pen to write. Her hand still trembled a little, but each stroke was slow and firm. I dreamed of my parents. They were smiling at me in a place filled with light. I do not think they blame you. After writing that, she paused for a long time. The ink spread into a small blot on the page. Then she continued writing. I was thinking, if you were only good to me out of guilt, then why, when I stole that bread, was there only impatience in your eyes? And no pity. You only made a phone call, trying to deal with a troublesome matter. Why, when I agreed to marry you, did you stand there stunned for so long? And then your ears turned red. She looked up, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at me. There was overwhelming confusion in her gaze, and a trace of hope. She was not questioning me. She was asking me for an answer. An answer that could let her escape this nightmare. I looked at her, my heart gripped by a gentle hand. I took the pen and carefully wrote beneath her words, Shen Youwei, I am not a good man. When I helped you, I did not think that much about it. Maybe I was simply in a good mood that day. Maybe I just did not want trouble. When I married you, I had not figured out whether it was love. I only knew I felt at peace with you. But now I know clearly. I cannot bear to see you cry. I cannot stand seeing anyone hurt you. When you are hurting, I wish I could hurt in your place. It has nothing to do with who my father was. It only has to do with you being Shen Youwei. If we must call it guilt, my only regret is not meeting you sooner, and letting you suffer so much, and failing to protect you, letting you suffer again because of me. I gave the pen back to her. She looked at what I had written, and her tears fell even harder. She picked up the pen, and firmly added 3 words after mine. Then she set down the pen, and reached out first, gently taking my fingers in hers. Her fingers were still cold, but that firm grip instantly swept every shadow from my heart. That night, she finally stopped sleeping with her back to me. She curled up in my arms, like a fledgling that had finally found its nest, her breathing steady and deep. Listening to her breathe, I thought it was the most beautiful music in the world. We knew the scars remained. Maybe they always would, but at least we were learning to live with them. And because we bore that burden together, the bond between us became stronger. Leaving the city was a decision we made a few days later. It was not entirely because of Jiang Xue's threats. More than anything, we wanted a different place. Somewhere untouched by the shadows of the past. A true fresh start. Shen Youwei did not hesitate. For her, wherever I was home. We sold the Glimmer Bakery, packed our bags, and prepared to move south. When the neighbors learned we were leaving, they all came to see us off, pressing bags of local specialties into our hands. Sweetheart, if anyone ever wrongs you, come back. I will stand up for you. She held Shen Youwei's hand and wiped away tears. Shen Youwei nodded, her eyes red. She tucked a bag of freshly baked cookies into the woman's hands. The night before we left, we packed the last of our things in the attic. Shen Youwei found a tin box at the bottom of the wardrobe. Inside were her grandmother's belongings, several old photographs, and the insurance terms I had written for her years ago. The paper had yellowed, but the writing was clear. If one day I fall on hard times and have to beg on the streets, just remember to give me a bowl. She looked at the paper and suddenly smiled. Then, smiling, she began to cry again. She picked up a pen and solemnly wrote a few words on the back before handing it to me. For the rest of my life, half my bowl will always be yours. My eyes burned. I pulled her into my arms. All right. It is a promise. As the train pulled away, the city that had held so much of our pain and tenderness slowly faded beyond the window. Shen Youwei fell asleep against my shoulder, still clutching the hem of my shirt. Sunlight streamed through the window onto her face. Serene and peaceful, I lowered my head and kissed the crown of her hair. I closed my eyes. What the future held, I did not know, but as long as she was with me, anywhere would be home. We eventually settled in a small coastal town. With the money from selling the bakery, we opened an even smaller dessert shop. We called it Half a Bowl of Time. Shen Youwei handled the baking, while I looked after the customers. Our life was modest, but peaceful. Little by little, she emerged from the shadows. Smiles returned to her face. Sometimes, deep in the night, she would still wake from nightmares, but I would always hold her at once, gently patting her back, until she fell asleep again. One evening, a year later, we walked hand in hand along the shore. The setting sun melted into gold, and the tide rolled in softly. Shen Youwei suddenly stopped, pointing at something glinting on the beach. I picked it up. It was a shard of glass, rounded smooth by the waves, casting a warm glow beneath the sunset. She took the glass from me and held it to the sunlight for a long time. Then she placed it in my palm, folding my hands closed around it, to tell me to keep it safe. I teased her, a token of love. She nodded firmly, her eyes sparkling. One afternoon, the weather was stifling, and there were few customers in the shop. Shen Youwei stood at the work counter, preparing cake layers for the next day. I sat behind the register, checking the accounts. I heard the faintest sob. When I looked up, Shen Youwei's hand gripping the whisk had gone still. She stared blankly out the window. Outside, a young father passed by with his daughter on his back. The little girl's bell-like laughter drifted through the glass. I set down the ledger and went to her side. She did not look at me. Her gaze still followed the father and daughter until they vanished around the corner. In the afternoon light, her profile looked a little pale. Her eyes held an emotion I could not describe, a complicated blend of longing and sorrow. I gently touched her arm. She came back to herself and forced a small smile at me, shaking her head to say she was fine. Then she lowered her head and stirred the batter with even greater force, as if trying to drive something away. I knew she was thinking of her parents, the childhood she should have had, with her parents beside her, filled with laughter and joy, was a loss she could never make whole. Jiang Xue's words were like a poisoned thorn. Even on bright, sunny days, they could pierce her without warning. That evening, after we closed, we sat on the small steps outside the back door, enjoying the sea breeze. Waves lapped gently against the shore, and fishing lights twinkled in the distance. Shen Youwei leaned against my shoulder. She was very quiet. I held her hand. Her palm was a little cold. Shen Youwei, I broke the silence. Should we go visit them? Her body stiffened slightly. She lifted her head and looked at me in confusion. I chose my words carefully. I mean, visit your parents. I know where the cemetery is. It was in the information Jiang Xue left behind. We can go talk to them. Tell them that you are doing well now. And on my father's behalf, say I am sorry. Those last words came out with extraordinary difficulty, but I felt they had to be said. Shen Youwei was stunned for a long time. Tears quickly gathered in her eyes, but she fought hard not to let them fall. She looked at me. There was struggle in her eyes, and fear, but it finally became resolve. She nodded heavily. On a clear morning, we closed the shop and took a bouquet Shen Youwei had made herself from white daisies and green lisianthus. We went to the cemetery outside town. The cemetery was very quiet. It rested against the mountains and faced the sea, a peaceful place for eternal rest. Following the information, we found their shared grave. The headstone was plain. It bore photos of Shen Youwei's parents, already faded beyond recognition. Shen Youwei walked to the grave, crouched down, and gently laid down the flowers. She reached out, using her fingertips to brush away the dust and fallen leaves, bit by bit. Her movements were as gentle as touching a fragile dream. She did not cry. She only kept wiping the stone in silence. Sunlight fell across her intent profile, and she seemed almost sacred in her stillness. I stood behind her. She spent a long while with her parents. Then she stood up, turned to me, and beckoned. I walked over and stood beside her before the grave. The sea breeze stirred our hair and clothes. Shen Youwei looked at the headstone, then at me. Then she raised her hands and began to sign. Her movements were slow, as if every gesture carried all her heart. Mom, Dad, this is Yi Fan, my husband. She paused, took a deep breath, and continued signing. He is very good to me. We have a little shop of our own, called Half a Bowl of Time. Our life is peaceful. I am content. As for the past, it was a terrible accident. I know it was not Yi Fan's fault. He is not like his father. Her gestures grew somewhat heavy, but remained steadfast. She turned to look at me. At last, tears slipped silently down her face, but there was a smile on her lips. She continued signing to the grave. So please, do not blame him, and do not worry about me. I am very happy now. Truly. Watching her introduce me to her parents in sign language, defend me, and tell them of her happiness, my throat tightened as though something had gripped it. My eyes burned. I reached out and tightly held her free hand. Facing the grave, I gave a deep bow. When I straightened, I looked at the faded photos on the headstone and said solemnly, Mr. and Mrs. Shen, I am Yi Fan. I am sorry, and I want to thank you, too. Thank you for bringing Shen Youwei into this world. Please rest assured, as long as I live, I will never let her suffer again. I will protect her with everything I have. I spoke slowly, every word from the depths of my heart. I knew words alone carried little weight, but it was all I could do. After we paid our respects, we walked hand in hand toward the cemetery hillside. On our way back, Shen Youwei seemed especially at ease, as if she had put down a burden carried for years. She even pointed to wild flowers by the road, signing excitedly to me. We could try using the juice from those flowers to make natural food coloring. After that, I sensed a subtle change in Shen Youwei. The faint shadow in her eyes seemed to have faded considerably. Her smile grew brighter and more open. She began taking more initiative in planning our future together. What flowers we should plant outside the shop, or once we had saved enough money, whether we should rent the space next door and expand. She even signed, maybe someday, we could adopt a child. I knew that visit to the cemetery was not only a comfort to her parents, but also for the two of us, a formal farewell to the past. We could not change the tragedy that had happened, but we could choose how to face the future. We took that half bowl of time, filled with bitter memories, and carefully poured it out. Then, with the half bowl that remained, we added understanding and acceptance, along with the sugar Shen Youwei made with her own hands, and slowly, earnestly savored the flavor of the rest of our lives. One day after closing the shop, we sat by the sea and watched the sunset. The setting sun painted the sea a magnificent gold and crimson. Shen Youwei rested her head on my shoulder, then suddenly traced a few words across my palm. It was not sign language, but writing with her finger. I carefully made out the words. She had written, half a bowl of time. My heart filled with joy. I lowered my head and kissed her hair.